workers, then digital land records, and then agrarian question in India, then contemporary farmers' movements. All these are in this session. So I think these are very fascinating papers. So we will have 20 minutes for presentation, and at the end we can have 25 minutes for discussion. It will be okay. So now I invite the first presenter, Professor Venkatesh Athreya, to present his paper.
Lunch, and that's not particularly conducive to receiving bone-dry presentations. But you'll get that now, and you have to manage. This is simply a reporting job. This is not analytical. I've not done any data processing with the data we have collected. We've just put down the bare minimum information we have. The motivation for this survey that I'm reporting on came from concerns about the conditions of the rural working population, and emerged also from an understanding that the rural working people have to be a fundamentally important agent in the kind of progressive transformation that we desire. So that's what motivated the study, carried out by a lot of people, not just me. I'm only reporting it. In fact, my colleague Gupta is in the audience. He's also involved. And the work itself in the field was done by activists of the All India Agricultural Workers Union, the All India Kisan Sabha, and many other activists from the democratic movements. So I've done the analysis, a very preliminary analysis, and I'm sharing that with you. Much more needs to be done. A survey of manual workers, I can read here. A survey of rural manual workers was carried out in 2023, 2 years ago, by a team of researchers and activists associated with two major organizations in the countryside, the All India Kisan Sabha and the All India Agricultural Workers Union, functioning in the state of Tamil Nadu. Their primary task has been to defend the interests of the peasantry and agricultural and other rural workers in Tamil Nadu. With the help of the AIKS and the All India Agricultural Workers Union, leaders at the state level, we had some planning. Activists of these two organizations and others were identified and invited to join the project of doing a survey of rural manual labor. Focus was only on rural manual labor, and carry out the field work. A state-level team was identified on a voluntary basis to plan and conduct the survey in 10 districts of Tamil Nadu. Originally 12, but 2 dropped out, so we had 10 districts. This is not a random sample. This is a very purposive sample, so it makes no claim to statistical generalizability. But it's a good indicator, given that it is across the state and covers different zones. It's a good indicator of the situation on the ground. We don't claim statistical generalizability for this data, but we think it's pretty useful to have this data and to look at it and to make some inferences therefrom. In all, data was collected from about 2,200 rural manual workers, exclusively manual workers, on many variables, but primarily days of employment and wages and specific occupations that they were engaged in. For the reference year was the year preceding the date of survey. That was the reference year. And after scrutiny, we looked at the data and some of them, this is all filled by non-academics completely, filled by activists on the ground. They were trained. We had sessions of training with them. We had a state-level camp, district-level camps, and so on. But all said and done, there are limitations here. And so we could not use all the responses we got from the respondents. So about 1,600 forms out of 1647 to be precise, were examined and found to be worth processing further. So this is data, as I said, primarily on wages and employment. And the sample of 1647 respondents consists of 675 women and 972 men. And let's see what the data tell us. Of the 1647 respondents, 759 persons were from the scheduled caste. This is an exceptionally high share because it's, the proportion in the population of Dalits is less. This is much higher than the proportion, roughly about 46% of the sample of workers are Dalits. Another 3.2% are tribals, totally 52 in number. And then we have 696 workers belonging to the backward classes. Now, if you look at the proportions in the population, 42.3% is what the backward classes account for. That's roughly in tune with their proportion in the population. Among the manual laborers in our sample, most of them belong to households that do not own any land. Not all of them, but most of them. But some, that is about roughly 2/3 own no land or come from households that don't own land. About 1/4, roughly 26.8%, come from households owning less than 1 hectare of land. So essentially marginal farmers, you might say. And this means that 94% of manual laborers are from landless or marginally land-owning households. Only one out of the 1647 individuals is a large farmer, it's a tribal, so it doesn't really quite count for much, but yes. Also you can say that if you look at the age distribution of the respondents, it strikes you that roughly about 1/8 of the sample, roughly about 12 to 13%, are rural laborers aged over 60 years and having to do manual labor to survive in the absence of any productive assets or land or other sources of income. So we have a large number of elderly people in this manual labor force, something that we should note. Of the sample of workers, I'm starting with sample characteristics, then we'll go to wages and days of employment. About 31.5% were illiterate. Now this is significantly higher than the illiteracy population for ratio for Tamil Nadu from the 2011 census, which is 20%. So this is a bit higher. And if you take those who have studied only up to 5th or less, and then non-literate, taken together, that's roughly around half or more of our sample. So it shows a very dismal state of education among the class of manual laborers. For Dalits, it's much higher at 73%, predictably so. And it's about tribes, it is 73%, Dalits is 55%, and backward classes 45%. There are also some small number of laborers with collegiate degree and higher qualifications who are still working as manual laborers, and that's about 6% of our sample. In our data, we find that women receive significantly lower daily wages than men. And there's only one type of work, the work under the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, where the women and men have almost equal pay. In fact, marginally, women get higher pay in 1 or 2 districts, so but it's roughly the same, not much of a gap. But in all other occupations, women get substantially lower wages. So when you look at claims of an ideological kind that are often made in Tamil Nadu with respect to the Dravidian movement and its impact and all that, the reality is that there is still substantial gender inequality across all forms of activity. So this is also reflected in the manual labor activity data. Likewise, if you look at wages in other activities, average daily work for women, not mine, sorry about that. How do I stop this? Okay. Can I put it away somewhere? Yeah. The wage is only around 200 for women. And it is quite, you get stories of high wages being told, but this is across 10 districts. It's not just one or two spots, and it's a fairly large sample. So I would think that that's a fairly robust number. It's not something that just happened. For men, the daily average wage in agricultural work, I'm talking about agricultural work now. The first is NREGS, this is agricultural work. There the men get around 370 per day, which is substantially higher. Not great, because remember we are across the country campaigning for a minimum wage of 500 rupees for several years now for factory workers. We're still not even getting to 370 for rural manual labor for males. There are significant variations across districts in wage rate. That is predictable because the agroclimatic conditions differ, the opportunities of employment differ, the extent of industrialization differs, and so on. But these differences in wage rates occur across districts, even in NRGS wages. Some districts report higher NREG wages, some others less. We don't know why this happens, but not a great deal of difference, some difference. Construction is a sector where rural manual laborers receive comparatively higher daily wages. In this sector, the average daily wage for men was rupees 555. So it's slightly above the minimum wage we had talked about a little earlier. For women, it's only 370. It's substantially lower. And across districts, if you look at the variation, the wage rate for women in construction work ranges from 350 to 400. In 3 districts, there is no difference in wages between men and women in construction. That's extraordinary. There must be some peculiar circumstances that account for it. I will not go into that, but that is also just a matter of interesting fact to pursue. What the survey has done is to give us details about the number of days of work and daily wages for laborers engaged not just in agriculture or NREGS or construction, but for a total of around more than 15 types of manual labor. So this is what had motivated the inquiry in the first place, that the enormous variety in the occupations in which rural workers are engaged in order to eke out a living. And so there are at least in our sample, there are at least about 15 types of manual labor, and they're employed in agriculture, NREGS, construction, brick-ins, painting, security work, vehicle driving, load carrying, and all that is listed there, huge number. And very heterogeneous occupations that they're engaged in. Average number of employment for manual laborers in the last year, the reference year, was 129, men and women put together. Men got employment for about 141 days, and women for 110 days. Morning, there was some discussion about employment. Somebody was saying 250 days and all that. This is certainly not the picture in Tamil Nadu. Roughly 140. These are fairly robust numbers is what I think. They're substantially higher. Numbers may be there in some, canal irrigated villages with 2 crops a year. But generally speaking, rural employment is, for all the hype that is generally made about Tamil Nadu, is actually quite modest. It's about 130 days or so. Agricultural work continues to be important. The fact that those who work in agriculture also work in many other occupations does not mean that agriculture has become less important or unimportant. 433 women and 578 men went for agricultural work. So out of our sample of 1647, 1,011, about 60% plus, were engaged in agricultural work as well. They were also working elsewhere. On the average, women worked in agriculture for 63 days and men for 76 days. The average daily wage for men was 438, and for women, less than half of it at 205. So that's a very striking fact of wage discrimination across gender. It's enforced by occupational specialization of men and women. That's one way to justify differences in wages. About 1,100 men and women participated in NREGA's work. And on the average, men worked 43 days, women 41 days. So this 100 days scheme, it's called, it's completely a misnomer. Right? They're not getting more than 40 odd days in a year. Because actually the law says that for every registered household under NREGAs, they should get 100 days of employment. But they're getting, even where the woman and man work together, they won't get much. Totally, this is the days of employment we are finding. The daily wage doesn't vary across men and women much here, as I've seen there, 195 and 192. In the construction industry, we have about 148 men reporting work in construction and about 45 women as well. And here, the number of days of employment for these workers is 117 for men and 95 for women. The average daily wage is 555, but that's, for women, it's only 371. It's quite a substantial difference in wages. It is true across all occupations, more or less, as you'll see. What is clear is that construction is an important source of livelihood, brings in good wages, relatively speaking, but it involves extremely hard work. Among the laborers in our sample, 9 women and 28 men worked in brick kilns. Look, just to get a sense of the variety of occupations, because we don't usually visualize this. 49, and the numbers of wages are there, I'm not going to repeat that. 49 men and 4 women are employed as drivers. Unusual to have 4 women drivers in the sample. And they were getting actually wages marginally higher than the men for whatever reason. So, but this is not something that is generalizable. It's a very small number. The daily work days and all that I put there. 9 women and 28 men working in brick kilns. Women worked an average of 123 days. Yes. And men worked about 106 days. I'm well in time, not to worry. The average daily wage for women was 335, for men it was 528. So this is a recurring fact of substantial gaps in gender wages. Okay. Painters, I've put the numbers there, how many days and all that. So again, you can see daily wage, there's no painter, no female painters, only male painters, get about 500 and odd rupees. Women are involved in security work. Interesting. Not too many, 2 women and 12 men. You can't make much out of that. And wage rates are also roughly 407 for men and 325 for women. That inequality persists. Home-based wage workers. Oh, earth digging is something. Shop assistants, home-based workers, domestic workers, marriage functions-related workers, machine operators, etc. Additionally, about 250 manual laborers were engaged in other types of work, which I have not classified here. Just numerous names mentioned there. Among them, the women worked on average for 131 days and men for 133 days in other manual labor occupations. Okay, our study clearly brings out the difficult living conditions of rural manual workers. The averages of employment is really 129 for average, 141 for men, 110 for women, very low wage rates, etc. All that is, wage situation is not good for either males or females. For organizations committed to improving the wages and working conditions of rural manual laborers, there is an opportunity now, if you armed with this information, to formulate some demands regarding rural minimum wages, days of employment, working conditions, and combine them with other important demands, which are not covered here, related to education, health. We not process the data entirely, cost of education, healthcare, and all that. So related to education, health, housing facilities, care services, and infrastructure facilities. These are all demands that can be formulated and raised as a follow-up to the survey. And this can be the basis for carrying out awareness campaigns and engaging in more sustained interventions. The findings of the study, for me at least, expose the severe exploitation that manual workers face, even in a state like Tamil Nadu, which many assume, provides decent employment. This is not the case at all. Some suggestions emerge from this, and my chair is looking at me. I'm also looking at him. We'll work out an amicable compromise in a couple of minutes. The formation of an alliance or union for all rural laborers will enable them to enhance their collective strength. A concrete list of demands can be evolved. This list of demands should include not only wages, but minimum aspects of a decent life, such as reasonable working hours, physical safety at work, provision of occupational services, insurance, education, health, etc. These should be formulated based on concrete studies, because this is a very broad aggregative survey. So we need to do concrete studies in concrete sites to evolve specific interventions. The demand for 200 days of employment per household has been there for a long time under NREGS. We're not even getting 40. 100 is what government law said. We wanted 200, they're getting us 40. So that is an important issue. Agriculture Workers Union has raised it, but hasn't got very far with it. Union government has moved in the opposite direction, reducing, weakening the scheme and discrediting it and so on. So that is something that we need to pick up in a big way. It's often argued that Tamil Nadu has been a welfare state. There are many welfare schemes that are there, but it is also clear from the data that Tamil Nadu is confronted by significant unemployment and underemployment. And it's also characterized by rather modest wage rates and difficult working conditions. I've not presented data on number of hours of work and all that, but it is there. And gender discrimination exists, so most rural manual laborers belong to scheduled caste, tribes, and backward classes. These are issues that the democratic movement must take up in a sustained manner. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Venkatesh Athreya, for sticking to time also, and very good presentation on the basis of primary survey. So now I invite Arindam Banerjee and Anirban Das Gupta to present their study. Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. First, let me thank FAS for organizing this very insightful, wide-ranging conference. A lot of different diverse perspectives have been discussed in this conference. Before I start the presentation of this work that I've been doing with Anirban Das Gupta, my colleague from IIIT Hyderabad, I also want to mention that I was one of the first FAS junior research fellows a long time back. So FAS did play a critical role in whatever I have done or not done. This work, which says reimagining the agrarian question in India, and we say put a subtitle, can productive forces develop sustainably, is also a rethinking of agrarian political economy, the way a lot of us has done, where we have not always brought in the ecological concerns. It has often been ecologically blind, which means that I'm also, or we are actually also looking at our own past work with some critical reflection. So what we do here, again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the details in the presentation. But what we have tried to look at is that what kind of rethinking needs to be done as far as agriculture is concerned and the agrarian question is concerned in the context of climate change, but we also take it slightly beyond climate change, bringing in the question of ecological balance, which goes beyond simply emissions. And we say that and what we are exploring is that can agriculture be thought of within a triple function framework, and I'll elaborate that. We do an ecological assessment of industrial chemical agriculture, the way we have practiced, which is now called conventional agriculture. Look at some of the alternatives that are emerging and discontents with them. And finally, we'll try to look at some questions regarding the Indian policy context, particularly with regard to agriculture. So this is something that I think has already come up in the conference as to what is the climate change implications, emissions, the EAT Lancet report says that, tells us that the food systems are responsible for 30% of the emissions. Methane emissions, and that will be nitrous oxide, and not NO2, it will be N2O. 75% of the nitrous oxide emissions are come from the use of fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. And I have added something which is not about emissions, but which is about the rate at which the topsoil is getting eroded globally, and which is 1 inch per decade. To put into perspective the seriousness of this particular aspect of industrial agriculture is that topsoil that covers the planet, which is a non-renewable resource, actually the rate of formation, the natural rate of formation of the topsoil is 1 inch per 1,000 years. So if we are depleting it at 1 inch per decade, then we are in some kind of a difficulty. In terms of, of course, the dominant discourse in agriculture has been that can we change agriculture, can we have a renewable transition, replace the use of fossil fuels and that might reduce partly the carbon emissions and all. And the other aspects that are there is the role of agriculture or soil as a carbon sink, and also, again, provider of biofuels. So these are some of the context in which we try to think about three very important functions that agriculture cannot avoid. And on the face of it, it might seem that they are in contradiction with each other. And I'll explain as to why these three functions are important. Of course, I don't think there would be much need for underscoring why food production is an important role that agriculture continues to need to play. It has been emphasized enough. In the context of developing countries, the question of livelihood also becomes important. And it becomes important because of the unsatisfactory trajectory of structural transformation of employment that had been thought of as a template of development. Arrested structural transformations, slowing down of that. There's enough evidence now. So therefore, agriculture might also need to play an important role as a source of livelihood. And third is the question of, will agriculture survive or sustain itself without striking some ecological balance? I'll elaborate all these points in the context, largely in the Indian context, but we can think of it in a global context as well. The first, on the question of food, if I place it in the Indian context, and particularly, if you look at the policy terrain of Indian agriculture, I would really say that the first and the only real intervention as far as production or how we do agriculture, how we cultivate is concerned, was in the 1960s, what we call as the Green Revolution. Major policy intervention happened in the 90s, but which was not so much about production, which was more about taking advantages of the export markets, liberalizing trade, which has had mixed results, which has also led to sections of farmers who shifted to commercial farming getting exposed to higher volatility of prices and indebtedness, and we all know that story. Ironically, actually, the 2020, the 3 farm laws was actually another attempt to intervene in production. But as we know that, and we'll probably hear from our co-panelist on this, on the farm laws and the struggle of the farmers, clearly the 3 farm laws did not have any, or largely did not have the interest of the stakeholders as far as, the people who actually work on the land. And we have seen how farmers have resisted that, and that has been rolled back. However, in terms of interventions in the agricultural production, there were ideas of precision farming, climate smart farming that was embedded in those laws. So practically what we are having is that we have not really had any serious agricultural policy for a very long period of time. Now in that context, when we look at the Green Revolution, it definitely, led to a significant increase in rice production and wheat production. It brought in some kind of self-sufficiency in food production by the early 90s, which has kind of gone through ups and downs, but it has sustained itself in some way. However, the paradox is that it has not always addressed the question of hunger. And one of the reasons is, of course, that this kind of industrial agriculture is also accompanied by the industrial food system, which means that a lot of food is actually diverted into rich foods, which processed foods, into the industrial food processing, and all of that is not always available. So there's a redistribution process that happens there in terms of what is really available for the poor, what is really available for the hungry. The other important intervention that definitely happened and went a long way in addressing the question of hunger was the public distribution system, which largely kind of based on rice wheat monocultures. Now, this itself also needs to be examined. Of course, there are critiques about the nutritional value of rice and wheat. Not going there at the moment. We still need to examine the sustainability of this public distribution system in the context of India. Two reasons, particularly in the longer run. One, when you look at the distribution of production in the country, large part of the PDS is dependent on the really super surplus food grain states, which is Punjab and Haryana, both in the case of rice and wheat. That's not to say that there aren't other areas that have made significant strides, but they have not emerged into surplus states compared to their own consumption. Now, rice, we already know, the northern part of India is not exactly ecologically suitable for rice cultivation. The consumption of water is much higher compared to other parts of India as far as rice cultivation is concerned, and groundwater preservation issues have already cropped up in a very serious manner in Punjab and Haryana. As far as wheat is concerned, one needs to again think about this, that with global warming, if temperatures rise, then the northern part of India, which has relatively cooler climate, might not eventually remain suitable for wheat. And it's more of climate vulnerability, which scholars have pointed out that there is a risk of wheat yields coming down in the longer run. So therefore, even for the public distribution system and for the thought that has informed public policy around the question of hunger and food security, there is a serious requirement for diversification from the rice wheat monocultures in a gradual manner, not tomorrow. The third aspect about food is what I said, this question of loss of dietary diversity and nutrient deficiency. While calorie intakes have kind of increased, sustained itself for larger sections of the populations, micronutrient deficiency has emerged as major, iron, zinc, and many other things. The NFHA's surveys tell us that anemia incidence amongst males are increasing. In terms of livelihood, I've talked about the particular situation that India and many other developing countries are placed in terms of an arrested structural transformation. There's a significant servicification of the economies, largely generating low-paid services where people are moving out from agriculture. And they're actually not moving out entirely. It's largely characterized by a circular migration where you have one leg in the rural areas and one leg in the urban areas. In the ecological balance, we try to go beyond the narrow question of climate change or decarbonization, but we talk about the questions of biodiversity, groundwater preservation, soil health, biogeochemical cycles, and eutrophication of water bodies. All of this related in some way in the way in which we do agriculture. And in terms of, these are some assessments of industrial agriculture, the question of higher water use because the synthetic fertilizers need water to move into the plants via osmosis. the energy intensity of high input agriculture again has been estimated as much higher than what it is for low input farms. Nitrous oxide emissions do not warm the planet immediately, but they stay for a longer time in the atmosphere. And the long-term assessment is that it has much higher potential, many times more than what carbon dioxide has as far as global warming is concerned. And finally, I mean, this needs to be updated. This is a little dated. Of the 6 planetary boundaries that have been now breached by the 2023 assessments of the Stockholm Research Center, the biogeochemical cycles for both nitrogen and phosphorus has been breached. Now, when we were looking at these questions, we thought that is it just a northern agricultural problem? It is a problem of north and south, because that is, of course, an important terrain of negotiation in any kind of climate mitigation. And we looked at, when we look at this figure, which maps the nitrogen and phosphorus emissions, then we actually see that it's not just the very clearly capitalist corporate agriculture that happens in the north, which is in US, in Europe, but you find that some of the areas which are breaching the nitrogen thresholds are actually in South Asia, the Indo-Gangetic plain, in large parts of China. The average fertilizer, again, the fertilizer per hectare fertilizer use in India is higher than what it is in US currently. And for China is actually many times, at least 3 times that of US. So therefore, it's not just about the big corporate agriculture with very large farms, but it's also, the rich farmers of developing countries to petty production who have adopted a certain style of agriculture are also kind of vulnerable and fit into that story. Now, when we look at, the fertilizer use efficacy in the case of India, and again, we have done it just for rice and wheat to begin with, we find that in most cases, for the major producers of rice and wheat, the efficacy has actually kind of come down. This has also been noted in the literature, except for some states like Madhya Pradesh, which have moved into wheat. Perhaps Chhattisgarh can be added to that list, which have moved into wheat cultivation much later with irrigation and all. There, fertilizers are still very effective. But for most others, either the yields are not increasing, there's large increases in fertilizer use, like West Bengal and Uttar Pradesh in the case of paddy, or, the potential of fertilizer use itself has tapered off, like Punjab, Haryana, in the case of wheat. Quickly, some alternatives that are there. One major alternative that is there is the question of, is the climate smart farming, precision farming that we have also heard about. In the developing countries, 3 thoughts, 3 questions that, is there a resource bias in the technology? How do smallholders actually adopt that precision farming? Second, it's also going to be more labor saving. And does that, address the livelihood question? More technical discontent about precision farming, which of course might be overcome in future, which is about, given the small landholding sizes, there are technical difficulties of aggregation and prediction based on the sensors, about the quantities of fertilizer and chemical inputs required. And there is a possible rebound effect. As costs go down, you might actually, cultivate more lands, clear more forests, and do that agriculture. In terms of large-scale renewable transitions, biofuels have been pointed out as their contention points regarding food prices, land use changes, loss of biodiversity. And mega solar projects have also been, critically discussed in terms of, does it alienate communities, land grabs, etc. The other, alternative is about, regenerative agriculture. One of the experiments that has happened is the natural farming in Andhra Pradesh, which has given results which are not very unsatisfactory, except that in that kind of agriculture, the labor productivity actually goes down compared to more conventional agriculture. Now how do we look at that is a critical question that we have. The other thing is that as far as regenerative agriculture is concerned, the first assumption that needs to be made is that there cannot be a single model which can be scaled up. You know, the natural farming model, the ICA made some tests and in northern India, and they found that the basmati yields and the wheat yields went down by something around 28%, 57% for these crops. So again, if you have to do agriculture which is ecologically embedded, you need a mechanism for discovering that agriculture, what is suitable, and it cannot just be centrally commanded. So policy making, the decentralization of that is something that is important. If we go into saying that there is something universal about a particular model of regenerative agriculture, then we'll probably make the same mistake as what has happened with industrial chemical agriculture. Quickly, because I guess there's 1 minute left, I'll come to the policy spectrum here, and there what we see is that many of the ecological concerns have been mainstreamed in the policy discourse through several reports, writings, newspaper coverage. But at the same time, the policy architecture is largely geared towards the chemical industrial agriculture. The government announced the national mission for natural farming, but the reality is that there are no funds that have been really allocated in any meaningful manner. And there are concerns from the scientific community also about what is the scientific authenticity of natural farming. So quickly to say that to conclude, first of course one needs to one can't look at agriculture in a granular manner about just use of chemical fertilizers or just less use of mechanical tracting. But it needs to be looked at more in a holistic manner, that what is it based on? Is it based on soil biology or is it based more on chemistry? There are two grand ways of doing agriculture. There would be pushback from corporate, agri-food, agri-business, which is entrenched in the upstream and the downstream. Discomfort amongst the agricultural science ecosystem. So this needs to talk with each other as to how agriculture can be done in a regenerative manner using modern science as well. And so therefore, in terms of the policy landscape, we need decentralized agroecological commissions to be formed, which also has representatives from the lowest strata of the society, those who actually do agriculture. Who determines an agroecological model is an important question. And that is what we say. And again, there are risks that any new model can again be hegemonized by the ruling classes in the rural areas. And which may mean that it doesn't really go, organic farming only for rich farmers is not good enough for the planet. Can the poor do it? Can regenerative agriculture be practiced by the poor? So what will be the class and the caste character of such an agroecological transition is an important question that needs to be engaged with. One last point, does regenerative agriculture or such an agroecological transition actually, as has been noted, is it pushing agriculture back? Is it a revisionist kind of a way of looking at things? The question on productive forces that Venkatesh had raised earlier, and it's been a running theme. In Marx, the question of productive forces was not just a technological question. It was a question where, it envisaged the flourishing of human endeavor, human ingenuity, when the laboring classes, the working classes, the oppressed classes are actually, they break the chains of servitude and it allows their full potential to be realized. Why is this important? Because if we have not solved the land question in our country, which largely in most parts of the country has not been, and if we continue to have rural elite classes, capitalist landlords, or whatever way we characterize them, and technology develops the productivity in that context, then that's not really the, a word of caution is that that's not the way we really imagine, or in a Marxian framework, as the unleashing of productive forces on the planet. Of course, the ecological balance needs to be taken into consideration. So I'll stop there, and if there are questions, we can discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I invite Satendra Kumar. His topic is contemporary farmers' movements, changing agrarian relations in Western Uttar Pradesh, India. So come, floor is yours.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. And I would like to thank you to FAS and organizers to put together this wonderful conclave and scholars and meeting all of you, and some of have been old friends and colleagues here. So it's been wonderful. And we can exchange these ideas. So I'm not sure what new I'm going to read here, which I have not written and published. So I was quite in fix, like what to present here. But I mean, farmer movements of 2021-22 has been so powerful and redefining movement of Indian politics in many ways. So there is a lot can be said and a lot can be discussed, because why? One point I think think always like how it has reignited the debate around agrarian question, or not only land control or distribution, but also like what Arindam is trying to say. I mean, it has all come out, the issue of sustainability, ecological crisis. Suddenly all these things in 4 or 5 years has come at the front, all these issues which were, I mean, of course people were discussing, but now they're becoming more and more at forefront. And issue of labor, which has been again very important, reconfiguration of labor. I mean, how non-farm expansion has reconfigured rural and as labor. I mean, these questions have become quite important. Second is about how farmers' movement has challenged the right-wing politics and I mean, this majoritarian regime, and which has been quite remarkable in the sense that people at grassroots level or villages, they learn how to engage with the state. I mean, this is one has been, I mean, long, more than 1 year long movement and struggle at Delhi borders and in villages and small towns across northwest India, from Punjab to Haryana and Western UP, bring very close engagement with police, state, and media. And so his whole has also changed that who are the farmers. Because why is important? In last 2 decades, when neoliberal economies or reforms, whatever you want to call them, it seems like India has changed dramatically in question of peasant or farmers who disappeared from the map of even policy, and as well as in my, I mean, if you ask me personal academic experience in D school where I was studied, I mean, there was a point people dropped studying rural because it considered it disappeared, or issue of caste or class, they were no longer important. So suddenly this, I mean, these movement is a reminder of that, what is India? I mean, so we lost on the glory of urbanization or something. Look, it will change this world, or we become something else. But it reminds us like we are not changed much actually if we have gone to even backward or on another direction if you look at the income and employment. So, and that's why, I mean, this movement has been very, very kind of awakening of people and academia and media and public, all of us together. Third question was personal to me. I belong to Western UP where I was born and brought up, but anyway, I spent most of the time in Delhi. There was a huge post-2020 Muzaffarnagar riots, 2013, this entire social fabric change in that region where whatever you call farmers movement was very strong, BKU movement and Bharatiya Kisan Union. And there was a kind of a people were more pronounced or closely related with farmers' identity, which was sort of, after around Green Revolution and when BKU took all the struggles to Delhi. And then suddenly, many people, we had no clue what has happened. And suddenly in 2013, big riots breaks out, and entire Western UP, it was a violence and arson and killing, and we could not understand why the urban phenomena of communal riots had spread to rural so quickly and so methodically. And that was important, and it continued not only in 2013, but it continued in 2021. When the farmers' movement, somehow, all those who are following it, they know there was a juncture when farmers of Western UP came together, and there was an event, and when that event brought a lot of people together across religion and caste and classes. That was a remarkable movement, though, the solidarities which emerged in 2021, they were, one might say they were temporal, but they were really important in the time when a particular ideology is trying to destroy the everyday fabric of social life. So these three important questions have been, through these questions, I look at the farmers' movement. How we make sense of it, because a huge literature has emerged around farmers' movement in the last 4 years, and various aspects have been discussed. But what are the main questions keep coming to us? How we understand these farmers, contemporary farmers movement, which has a huge potential of challenging what Indian farmers movement has done. One, they challenge, of course, right-wing politics, and kind of challenge a very majoritarian regime and corporate capital. Plus, also they bring people together across classes and religions, particularly in the time when one can see the polarization is the only tactic to survive in politics. And that time, how there is no other way. So in this time when people come together and challenge these politics, it's very heartwarming from perspective of activism, also for democratic and as well as a academicians. That is where I come from, and I try to bring it through how we read and what's happening in the farmers' movement, particularly in terms of classes. That's what I thought I can add up after, not recent work, but I have been doing for a long time, but try to see why people came together. And this is Western UP, India. I think everybody knows here, but Western UP, many people may not be knowing. My study based in Muzaffarnagar, which is where have been quite infamous, and it was a place where Muzaffarnagar riot took place in 2013 and gave a kind of a, lead to entire politics after 2014 in UP and elsewhere, how politics learn to engage with rural and utilize entire cleavages into the right wing, or churning into the right wing vote bank through polarization. So what I'm doing is a longitudinal study. I will not present here, whole data, but I'm an ethnographer and studying 2 villages since my PhD, when I started first field work in 2004. Then I restated, keep going back and collecting data systematically in 2015 and now 2025. And this is a rough sort of what I'm doing and trying to say. So it is not very new, but it goes with the broader picture, what we have huge data at national level. First I will bring to that table, only this one table I brought it here, and it will help you to understand that 2-3 issues which has been raised. The last Arindam has raised the issue of land. It is very important who controls the land and is an issue of social justice. So this is quite interesting if you look at the 2005 and 2025. Land loss is increasing, but also land consolidation is increasing. Not is a big difference, but slightly less, 1% has changed. But still, there is not a total politicization or depeasantization happening. So it's a huge group of, farmers or landless are there, and they're still holding to a small, which is also match with the national picture. It's not just a village, but in the sense of reflection, and also have a kind of support from other Western UP villages studied by FAS also, and Palanpur and in Eastern UP village. And Yen is here also. I think he has done Muzaffarnagar long ago here, so I will be benefited from his all his studies from Muzaffarnagar and Eastern UP. But for me, it was interesting, like both this this table opens up a huge debate around rural and agrarian changing relations, which is it's a huge kind of a population is still continuing living. For instance, village size has increasing. It's not decreasing despite the rapid urbanization. This is what, of course, at the micro level, what, this data was presented before, what laborers are doing, informal sector. I have all sort of this data, but I thought just to sharing who were the farmers who were participating in this farmers movement in 2021. So mostly they were upper OBCs. And it's a class itself is a rich farmers and middle farmers who were dominant. And this micro level of studies also opens up a little bit gray areas of when we come why these groups are quite active in farm movement or farm unions, why not others? That is very helpful, because once you say category of farmer or peasant, it masks a lot of class and caste. It masks these other variables, who is what caste, gender or class. And that's why I try to brought it to understand when you see people who are able to mobilize and to camp in Gazipur, there was a particular group, they could do that. But interesting thing, as I said, this time, unlike in 1980s, which reminded Boat Club rally of Mahendra Singh Tiwana, this was also very different in the sense of composition. A lot of young people were involved across caste and classes. And they also tried to bring these women, but though superficially in the sense they were not giving a space of leadership. Anyway, I'll come back to this. First, I'll try to see what is happening here. So there is a contradictory agrarian structure emerging in which small and marginal farmers are expanding, but still there is a small section of jats or rich farmers classes continue to accumulate, which is quite similar to what Gaurav is doing and has done. I think Gaurav is here. His Patiala village studies, he has done excellent work, and it's quite similar in that way. It's a kind of, we compare Western UP and Punjab. it's not very different many ways, very similar. And of course, land inequalities persist. But again, they are not, the fragmentation is continuous, but also, as I said, small consolidation, the section is there. So accumulation has not gone away since like a section of class farmers are doing this accumulation continuously. And that's why land question always important. And historically, who has benefited from Green Revolution? So then it comes back to this whole, I mean, why this is important, this micro level data, you can also kind of disaggregate which are the groups who are where, in even informal market and also in accumulation, and also in middle or non-middle, and how these categories are evolving gradually. That is what I wanted to present, but here I knew we won't have that much time because I have to weave this story through farmers' movement. I have only 5 minutes, so I will come to main, I think, what I'm trying to say through this, I mean, so rather, so what is the, I mean, if you ask me, what is we gain, it helps us understand the farmers' movement. So, yes, farmers' movement reasserted agrarian politics in new liberal India when there was almost question of agrarian question was almost diminishing in last 20 years before farmers' movement. And yet there is, of course, this, it all mediation by caste, as you know, there's a deep caste and class and regional divides we have seen in the farmers' movement. And that's why it has its own limitations, though it's a huge transformative potential. Similarly, I mean, caste-bound mobilization, like for instance, my study comes from BKU, from Western UP. It has a mostly, I mean, leadership is Jat, and also kind of, that's why they have been pre-2000, I mean, around 2013 and before, they mixed up with, or sort of they were kind of naturalized farmers as a Hindu or something, because though there was a lot of overlap and exchanges between Hindu and Muslim farmers, but gradually I think once a shift, and I think Rama Kumar papers have, how his work has shown it very well on that communal violence in Western UP. Regional limitations failed to expand eastward, or as we have seen, I mean, there was a farmers' movement has created huge political dividends in UP, but we have I mean, of course, in 2022, they brought back the opposition, Samajwadi Party, which was totally diminished and disappeared. So they brought them somehow, and 2024, Samajwadi Party got 37 seats, which is quite a huge change, and BJP reduced to they had to struggle to somewhere. But they could not do much in eastern UP, and that's confined into northwest UP. So that is another thing, this regional, I mean, the focus of the farmers' movement has to be think through how you expand, you know, nationwide or, I mean, across country. Agrarian populism, it has been there. I mean, we all know there is a certain, I mean, thing of the idea of farmer itself is a, you know, masking all sort of differences. Of course, it has been, as I was trying to say, for me as an academician and also engaging with the farmers' movement, it was very elating and a very, very, very powerful movement. How they have changed this, or they challenged this deep polarization in Western UP, and people start, because there was a point I want to tell you in real, farmers and laborers both stopped going out to fields after dark. There was such kind of polarization. They feared each other, who will attack who. So that's why the farmers' movement was really, really game changer for people. Last but not least, democratic openings and secular possibilities. We know, I mean, now, Karana, parliamentary seat has gone to, you know, to Samajwadi Party, and the persons, those who were involved politically, like, I don't know, individuals in Muzaffarnagar seat who was gained, you know, huge margin, I think the person lost. So it's a huge, I think we gained so much by this farmers movement. So I end this presentation with the question is, the challenge we have, I mean, two larger challenges we face. One, we have a constant march of new liberalization, and new liberalization and its policies and expansion is fragmented ruler constantly. I mean, so the challenge, how the classes, how we bring these different fragmented reality groups together. And second, the right-wing politics has this whole agenda to pitting groups against each other. In that context, making a wider mobilization across country is a big challenge for all of us. Thank you. I end it here.
Thank you. Now this is the last presentation of this session by Prasad Rao and T. Sagar. And I was reading about their affiliation presently. I think they have the grassroots experience also. Come.
Honorable Chair, fellow delegates and participants, good evening. See, our today's paper Untold Aspects of Digital India Land Records Modernization project. It's very, very important. Why we have to choose these untold aspects, that is more important. What is told, we understand, everybody understands. But untold is, these are relating to the concerns of the farmers. Because the concerns of the farmers have been totally ignored in the scheme, that is modernization of the records, land records. Because land records is basic. For this group, I need not detail. Everything is land. If land is not there, we are not here. So that is the importance. Friends, this paper has been prepared based on the Telangana state experience. Both since the struggle of Telangana armed peasant uprising, and also till recently, that is Digital India project, now they are doing work on it. Till now we will cover, but very, very briefly. This is very important because it affects the basic existence of the farmers. As a farmer community, as independent plow or independent cultivators or producers, everything is depending on it. Why we have to consider these things is that actually this land is relating to the states. States only can enact and then implement anything about land holding or land structure, everything. But here, the central government, because of its policy, declared policy is corporatization of agriculture. They are not emphasizing for many things, but it is still on the active agenda of the government, corporatization, for which the acceptance of the farmers and people in general is not there. But still, the ruling class, irrespective of whatever party is there in power, they are not changing. They are only, depending on the requirement and situation, they are slightly modifying the pace of the development. But with the formation of government under NDA with BJP leadership, they are hastening the process. See now, if you take the scenario, Indian scenario, almost all fields, sectors have come to this corporatization or neoliberal policies. And then mostly corporate influence that is going on. But in agriculture, they are unable to come. If you take the agenda of economic reforms that was taken sometime in 2001 or so, around that period, they have prepared agenda for corporatization of agriculture. And then they have fixed schedules also. Within a period of 3 or 4 years, they wanted to complete. But now, almost more than 3 decades is over, and they are unable to corporatize or privatize, additional privatize the way the rulers like it. That is why, because there is a lot of resistance from the farmers, from the people, because the issues involved are so basic. So, from that point of view, this Digital India project on land record modernization is very, very important. See, what will be its impact, that we have to concern, because it affects everyone. And then it changes the entire face of agriculture. Whether it is farming will be there, that is cultivation by the farmers, or corporate sector will take over, all this depends on these land relations. So the basic question of land relations, they are depending on this Digital India. Because one of the main declared purpose is to facilitate land markets. That is very important. Land markets means sellers and buyers. Who are the sellers here? It is the crisis-ridden farmers who are mostly debt-ridden. They do not have any bargaining capacity. So they are the buyers, sellers. And then who are the purchasers? That is very important. Definitely, the money that is coming by way of capital for purchase of land is from non-agricultural sources. Now, if you take the manner of capital accumulation of these non-agricultural sources, it is the service sector, to some extent it is involved, or, well, account manipulators. That's all I can say, because they mobilize huge amounts. And then they can invest any amount in a land purchase. But the impact, the final impact depends on the kind of socio-economic milieu that we will have in the states. It is not uniform in India. In South, it is in favor of the small farmers. Then politically, they are more assertive compared to other states, relatively speaking. Because I am keeping Kerala, West Bengal, and then Tripura a little bit away, because their land reforms been effectively implemented, and then left forces have been in power. So there the impact will be different. But when you take other states, particularly Telangana also has got a history of struggle for land rights. Almost 4,000 people, have sacrificed, they have become martyrs in the process. So, attaining the objectives of digital land record modification, that is modernization, is not that is in Telangana. I will come to the examples later. There is a thing. Friends, the very purpose of this land, that is Digital India land record modernization, is 100% government financed. And then, but earlier to that, we have got a national digital modification, that is National Land Record Modernization Project we have. That is in sometime in 2008. The government of India started at the suggestion of the World Bank. But our constitution is such that anything can be done only by the states. Center can't do directly with land relations. Therefore, instead of directly doing the changes in the land ownership or land tenure, the central government is adopting indirect methods of market forces. It is using market forces to implement the corporatization agenda. That is very important. That means it is not directly telling what it is going to do, what it wants, but it is doing because of the people's resistance through indirect means. It means that the reality is being suppressed or only not expressed. That we are calling it as virtualization. See, this virtualization is an important process of expanding globalization. And in agriculture, the corporatization has to expand. So, it is bound to implement virtualization policies. That means the reality is always suppressed. It is not told explicitly. And sometimes ambiguous things are there deliberately in the policy that is declared or in the scheme that is evolved. These ambiguities are introduced or built in, so that ultimately when it comes to question of settling, it depends on the balance of class forces at various stages, and wherever it is feasible, they want to implement corporatization. That's already we are seeing. And wherever it is not feasible, for a while, they will keep away the agenda from the agenda, so that the entire policy of reforms is not upset. That is important. They don't want upsetting the this entire reform policies and neoliberal policy, corporatization, and so they are forced to adopt this. But from 2008, say realizing the constitutional provisions, they changed the project name and also little bit purpose also from National Land Record Maintenance, that is modernization project, to Digital India project. See, in case of modernization, what is involved was use of computerized data for storing and recalling, for maintenance of records, everything computer is involved. So, computer for us, particularly in India, rural side, it is utmost modern technology. Then, digitalization, in digitalization also use of computer is involved. But there is a lot of difference between computerization of the data and then the digitalization of data. That I will come when I come to Telangana experiences, because we have got practical results in it. Friends, so the impact of this digitalization project will depend on socio-economic milieu. It will vary from state to state. According to the that is central government, the latest is that they have completed digitalization project 98% in 168 districts in the country out of 780 to 800 districts. They are unable to give exact number. I don't know why. That is the position. So, already that impact of this digitalization is reflected, manifested at least in these 168 districts. So, we should focus the likely changes that will come in the country by studying at least closely some of these districts. Along with other districts also, this Agrarian Foundation is doing, Foundation for Agrarian Studies, is a good thing. But what I feel is that some of the districts where 98% of the digitalization work is completed, they also should be studied. Again, with whatever is convenient, because I know the difficulties that are involved. That's why I'm not going to details. Because land relations, response studies, it's not that easy. Then second thing, this present land, this digitalization project, see, they are changing actually. Under digitalization project, the main change that is contemplated is that is introduction of unique this land parcel identification number. That is very important. Yes, okay. That is very important. So I thought that I have some little bit more time. That's why I am going slow. Otherwise, I would have got fast. I'll complete it. So that UDI, unique identification, land record identification project is there, and that is commonly known as, that is akin to our survey number. And then these survey number, that unique identification number, it is 14-digit number, and then they are based on this alphabetical order. Alphabets, they use it 14 digits, and then throughout the country they are supposed to do. But what is land parcel is not defined. It may be a few thousands of crores or 100 acres, or we don't know. Nothing is defined in the act. But it is akin to our old survey numbers. That is very important. Survey numbers, everybody understands. If you name the state, district, taluk, village, if you know everything, these 4 districts, everybody understands what it is. But in case of this unique identification number, they are based on geo-coordinates. That means longitude and then latitude. And then it is expressed in angles, which nobody understands except the specialist in it. That is a problem. The boundaries of this this unique number, they call it as now Bhu Aadhaar number. It is similar to your Aadhaar card. Bhu Aadhaar card, they are numbering, they are referring, but they are the coordinates, geo-coordinates define the boundaries of this Bhu Aadhaar number. And then they are imaginary lines. That is very important. And then on the land, who will identify it? That is the major problem. And then, you see, our farming is beset with small numbers. In Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana, 92% of the farm holdings are less than 5 acres. And then less than 1 acre, almost 60% is there. So, based on measurements, based on this geo-coordinates, it's very difficult to identify. There will be errors. Then there will be, you can't fix the boundaries on that. You may be able to measure the area, but you can't fix it particularly for small fields. So at some stage, we have to use conventional method of survey and then numbering it, and then geo coordinates have to be fixed for parcel of land. And then they want to give this card, Aadhaar card, just like Aadhaar card, Bhu card, for the residential plots in the villages. You see, the central government note, just I referred, that link I have given you. In the paper I have given you the link. If you see it, it is very difficult to locate. It doesn't specify that they are going to give Bhu Aadhaar card to the agricultural lands. They want to give for land, that is for land located in the village. That is for residential purpose. That is very important. The purpose is written. So there is vagueness in that. So the vagueness leads to virtualization of the entire area. They want to do anything. If they want to do anything, we don't know what they will do. That is the crux of the problem. The second point, experience of Telangana, I'll come. The rest of things are discussed. Only Bhu Aadhaar card, central government wants to link everything to it, including this assistance during natural calamities, and then now extending all subsidies, then cash transfers, everything they want to link it to this Bhu Aadhaar card, based on one minute, because I thought we have 20 minutes time. Sorry. I'm very sorry. Otherwise, we will be missing good points. From Telangana, I will come because I will cut short. The rest of the things are there in the paper, you can see. In Telangana, what has happened? We have got a history of Telangana armed struggle and all those things I told. So we have got special enactments. That is protection of tenant rights, all those things were there. But gradually they are removed away. So they had a pilot project from 2005 to 2008 or 9, but 4-5 years they carried. In that, in one district, it was revealed that there are measurement errors nearly out of the complaints given in 78% of the cases. Then partnership problems are there. Then we have got large number of unregistered sale deeds, that what we call it as Sada Bainamas. I explained it in the paper. And then out of the total 70 lakh holdings, you see, I'm sorry, just a KCR government, that is Telangana, TRS, now BRS, that government, see, they introduced this land resurvey. Land resurvey was not taken for 90 years. After 1936, no survey was done in Telangana, land survey. Only record management is there. Now, when KCR came to power, he wanted to modernize the land records, not survey. No survey is involved. So, they have identified nearly 70 lakh holdings. But out of 70 lakh holdings, what KCR did is, while giving record of rights, he omitted deliberately the column relating to actual cultivators. So, all tenant cultivators' names were removed, and then they are deprived of all the benefits of the farmers extended to them. This is one aspect, out of 70 lakhs. Then another 11 lakhs we have got Sada Bainamas. That means the sales executed based on white papers. They are not registered. He promised to regularize it through dharni. They call it as dharni. But 24 lakhs tenants, 11 lakhs, that is Sada Bainamas, totally 35 lakh holdings. Out of 70 lakh holdings, 35 lakh farmers, they are deprived of all benefits being extended by the government. So what has happened in the next elections, government was defeated. Though he has implemented several other things in favor of the agriculture, like input subsidy, then insurance, all those things he has implemented. Still, he has been defeated. That is the reaction of the farmers. Then, I'm sorry. Right. Then, last point only I will tell. This new government promised to correct the mistakes of this KCR, but that was, it was not done so far. Some things they have attempted, but still the work is under progress. Pilot project is going on. They want to give Bhu Aadhaar card. The results have not yet come. So that points, details I have given. You can go through it. The pilot project results will come maybe probably in 1 or 2 months more. Thank you. Well, I thought it is 20 minutes.
Yeah. So when you are in a, you can say, movement to present the paper, you don't know how much time
This is
has.
experience, not theory.
That's very sorry that you did not get that much time you need to present the whole paper. Actually, we want that, okay, there are 15 minutes or 14 minutes for the discussion. So I request the audience to raise the questions, pertinent questions in brief. Don't explain too much to the speakers. So kindly.
REGA work with other activities, and by itself the fact that they do only 40-45 days NREGA work could be explained by the fact that your data showed the NREGA wages are significantly lower than wages in other activities. The question, however, is that why is there such a long part of the year in which they are doing neither? Why is that the case? Why do they not do NREGA work more than 40 days if they are only working 141 days, otherwise all other activities combined?
Okay, then, Mahika.
Thank you. I have a question for Dr. Anirban Das Gupta.
I have a slide in the conclusion 5 that there is momentary Hindu-Muslim unity revived grassroots secularism, and it showed a potential to rebuild rural politics around livelihood and justice and not identity. The biggest union, the most active union is Bharatiya Kisan Union, led by the Tikayats. And I'm very skeptic about this conclusion because BKU has traditionally been a highly opportunist, conservative, patriarchal, dominant caste group-led communal union. And it's strong because it's exclusive and therefore exclusionary. It has often supported in the past 2 decades the agenda of identity politics. So expecting a rebuilding of rural politics around livelihood and justice by them in the broad category does not appear to be a positive prospect. So what
See, I mean, how did BKU work within the village setting, which is so unequal? And as you have said, the upper OBCs, which must be the good judge there, they are not only agrarian anymore. There are other professions through which they control the capital. So what was their interaction during the farmers' movement, along with, you know, being upper OBCs, controlling a movement through BKU, and yet, as you were saying, everyday secularism being performed? So how did they connect these two contradictory, you know, sort of identities? Thank you.
Here. Actually, what do you mean by agrarian populism in the context of the farmers' movement, in the context of Western UP? And in what manner this agrarian populism is actually masking class differences or class divisions within the movement?
Thank you. I have one question for Dr. Satendra Kumar and one for Dr. Prasad Rao. This whole capture of the Kaps by the Sangh Parivar. But one of the big, Balian Kap and the Mali Kap were the two big ones there. And I'm eager to know from you whether the penetration through Kaps is something that continues. But we know about Balian Kap through newspapers, but I'm still curious about what's happening inside the Mali Kap, about politically as well as, you know, how they are reacting to the whole communal discourse. Dr. Prasad Rao, there's one question that I have for you, which is that when you use a drone technology or a satellite technology, can you hear me? Are you able to coordinate at a very rough level only? But what Kerala does is, it is introducing like Grama Sabhas, what is called as revenue sabhas. And it is taking these maps to each person's house, and then they are getting it correct. Right? So this is whether this can be done is yes. Yes.
Implement, it should be also mentioned.
And then last,
That now it is very popular to draw this triangle. You know, food, livelihood, sustainability, or ecological. I can do it for transport, mobility, employment, sustainability. I can do it for steel, I can do it for infrastructure, I can do it for buildings. So this somehow this whole extra moral attitude that we bring to agriculture, you know, mother nature, purity of mother nature, you know, this is the kind of discourse. So I wonder whether we are simply losing sight of the plot, which is that it is an economic activity, people need employment, and of course such economic activity must not endanger the planet, and keep it simple. Because that's why there's so when you talk of regenerative agriculture, I agree with you that it does not, cannot be a one-size-fits-all. But even earlier, I think it is a travesty of the facts to say it was one-size-fits-all. It's not of which Swaminathan took the dwarf variety from Mexico and planted it in Punjab, no? There was a process. All innovation in agriculture is considered adaptive innovation. And there's a whole school of thought on this. So perhaps we should keep this a little more simple, and it would be useful to drop the moral baggage around agriculture and treat it in a more straightforward and objective fashion.
so we have very less time. I think every speaker should have 3 minutes to answer. So in the same sequence,
Identification, location of the plot and boundaries, that is very important. In Kerala, we understand that apart from the this aerial survey, they are at the Gram Sabhas they are conducting, and then they are finalizing the boundaries. In Telangana also, what we have proposed, because there is a separate committee, they are following the regulations. What we have proposed is to identify at the local level hybrid system, At the macro level, you identify, but at the micro level, where is necessary, they can measure and fix the boundaries. Otherwise, it will lead to a lot of conflicts in the village.
Professor Surjit Mazumdar's question. You see, people are demanding employment and NRGS. They're not getting it. So it's not, if you look at total employment, for men it's 141 days, for women it's still I don't remember now, but something like 117 days or whatever. So it's not as if they're employed around the year. It is simply that they don't get more than 40 to 45 days of employment per household, because that's the way the scheme is run. And the union government, of course, plays a big part in not sending resources, not following up and all that. And of course, the local vested interests are quite happy to minimize employment in NREGS. Somebody else mentioned that we should include urban areas in. We were not providing a list of demands, but that for a long time, Agricultural Workers Union has demanded a scheme similar to NREGS for town panchayats and municipalities. And in some parts of the country, that is gathering some momentum, but that is not part of our agenda, not part of what I was trying to say.
On the first question, I think we left more questions than answers. That's part of the thought process. But if you ask me, I'll go the Henry Bernstein framework. And if we think of agrarian question, in that the first one, the question of emancipation, the second one, question of productive forces, and the third one, transition. Now, transition itself, as it was imagined in the more historical cases, really occurred in very specific conditions, and those conditions do not exist, those colonial conditions do not exist. So therefore, we have seen the slowing down of transition. As far as productive forces are concerned, what we are saying is that productive forces can grow, but which takes humans and nature together. So there has to be a moderation of the classical Marxist thinking on that. The most important is the first one, which is the question of emancipation of the oppressed. And here, the thing is that, and here I will connect with, Professor Jayaraman's question. It's not really a moral question at all. It's not really a moral question. Rather, the question is actually, a political economy / scientific question, which is that whatever, and I completely agree with you that we can do it for transport also, and we can do it for automobiles also, and for every other thing. Now, the point is that, any kind of productive activity on the planet necessarily extracts a certain amount of material from nature. The question is really at what rate we can afford to extract that nature. The ecological thinking will tell us that we should, what you also said, that we should not carry out our productive activity at a rate which harms the planet. So there has to be a regenerative element to agriculture and industry and other things as well. So in that context, when it comes to the question of the poor working people in the context of climate change, ecological disbalance, this whole planetary boundary is being breached, if the question is really the question that, whichever way we do our agriculture, including we can use chemical inputs also, will it be sustainable in the long run? If it is not sustainable, through the distributive mechanisms, it is going to be the poorer classes which will be hit. If there is a, difficulty in terms of increasing our food production and other things. So in that sense, the agrarian question really comes back to something which, we have not done earlier, is that when we talk about the emancipation of poor, it really also has to think deeply about the relationship, the dialectical relationship between humans and nature. And is there a hierarchical relationship there? Does nature have a voice? Does nature get a voice in these discourses, in discussions? If it does not get, it does speak to us in very difficult voices. So that balance is something we cannot avoid when we think about the emancipation of the poor. We are, so that's the whole question. Are human beings, what is the hierarchical nature between humans and nature? Large part of the human beings are actually, part of nature. I mean, the climate change is going to attempt them. So more than Anthropocene, I'll say Capitalocene is something we should look at.
Temporality of it. So I can give you the picture of both hope and despair. You presented despair, and I agree with you, and we end it here, but I brought you, even though it says all what you have said, I agree with you, patriarchal, opportunist, communal, whatever is good. There was a moment then they brought Jola, a Muslim leader, to the stage and they apologized. See, there was a moment, and there is a result I show you that the communal people who were involved in that massacre, they lost the election. So there is a temporal hopes, okay? That is what I was trying to say. I agree with you. So there is no question of disagreement with that, and we can talk a lot about, I don't want to take time because, so quickly now, another thing, these upper OBCs, this is a fantastic question again, and we need to explore it rather, because these all castes is diversified and have invested into all sort of things, and there are some are good businessmen. But interestingly, that's why we need a longer agrarian history, where they are placed in Delhi's economy. So look, they are very close, or they own Delhi in one way, but they are nowhere in power structure. They are considered, again, the patriarchal, rude, or dehati, or somebody, kind of uncouth. And that's why these multiple identities work well with them. On the one hand, there was a romanticized identity of agrarian Kisan that they could place it whenever they interact. So I think that's, again, this kind. Agrarian populism is part of all, without populism, you can't organize rural. This has been, last 50, as 1960 onwards, agrarian populism in the name of farmer. The farmer movements. When you call, then immediately the question comes: who are these farmers? But that's how you organize rural versus urban, and farmer versus non-farmer. And that's why the micro data which I presented, it helps you a lot to unpack that category, who are the farmers and who are not. Basically, who are doing what also other, that data was presented, who was laborer, and we can do it much better way. Last, Ramakumar. See, this is an interesting question, and we will discuss it later, but for positive note, or both negative, because RSS is not entering just without, RSS has gone there and they enter into these CAPs. They have been also a lot of these processes where they are able to, and that's why I call them, this how dislocation from villages and dissemination of Arya Samaj, how, give them entry. So it won't be a very uneven process because of depending political opportunities available for new political leaders. And because there is also internal movement, people want new political middle class, or agrarian middle class want new political opportunities. They immediately jump to these opportunities when right-wing politics allow, and then they give a space to. So it's both ways. One, this Sangh is coming, but also insiders also coming to them to grab, and when old political parties such as Congress or Samajwadi not able to give up or give them new opportunities. For example, Samajwadi party used to be had a very good stronghold in Western UP, and suddenly you see in 2014 they disappeared. So it's I hope I am able to answer, but we can have a long discussion. It's a very interesting actually how they come and expand. Thank you, and I think everybody is getting restless, so we end it here. Thank you.
Yes, Professor Venkatesh raised issues for the organizations, agriculture workers, and so many people have raised the issues for the farmers' organizations. But that agitation more or so belongs to my state, Punjab. So we are facing lot of problems. After the end of the morcha, whatever happened, that is a issues. But one thing is very clear. Either the students can fight this right-wing politics, or these farmers. The industrial labor is there. They are fighting. One day, national strike may be there. But now, because of mechanization of agriculture, now the people are free in the villages. I know. They can come and sit for a long time. There is no risk, no income loss. Agriculture work is going on, not even during the COVID. And then they can do, now mechanization, not that much manual hard labor. They can do the work of the others. They were, in my village, we have that rotation. That 1 week this will go, another week this will go, he will do the work. Now they have the capacity. The farmers in Punjab and Haryana, they have the capacity, they have the freedom, they have less risk, no income loss. Otherwise, in case of all industrial workers, there is risk of income loss, of job loss. There is no job loss in agriculture. And the agriculture workers' unions cannot do. Their base is gone if they are coming. So what are the farmers who are owning land? So these dimensions must be studied when we are discussing all that. So with this note, very good presentation. I am thankful to all the paper presenters, good speakers, and the more thanks to you to listen and participate in this session. Thank you. Thank you very much.